Hi everybody, my name is Andrew, and I am here to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story about my experience in a religious cult when I was 17. The religious cult is called the Moonies, and it was the most feared cult of the late 1970s. It's called Bad Mooney is the name of my memoir, and I wasn't paying attention when they were trying to brainwash me, so I didn't end up brainwashed, and I was kidnapped by the San Francisco Police Department and then later went through deprogramming, from which I escaped. And then I returned to the cult only to leave disillusioned 2 months later. I got a story for you that starts when I was 16, when I left home for the first time. This is before I was in the religious cult. I left to join the burgeoning No Nukes movement, which was very popular in the late 1970s. It was a well-meaning movement that petered out after only a few years. And I was on my way to New York City from my hometown of Moline, Illinois, and I was hitchhiking. And I was headed east, and this guy in a Pontiac SS picked me up. And he had dirty blonde hair and a mustache, and he didn't talk to me for miles and miles and miles. And then finally he said to me, do you know what I do? And I said, no. And he said, I'm a butcher. And I said, okay. And I told him right away, well, I'm a vegetarian, and I don't eat anything that crawls, walks, swims, or flies. He didn't seem to like that too much. And then he took a satchel full of knives and he laid them across my lap. And he took one out and he showed it to me and he said, do you know what this one's for? And I said, no. And he said, this is for deboning. And then he took another one out and he said, this one's for skinning. And then he took another knife and he said, this is for finishing. And so on he went. And I was so naive that I didn't realize he was trying to frighten me. And I just said, oh, that's interesting, you know. And he was pissed off because I wasn't scared, and he pulled over and threw me out of his car. So then I put my thumb back up, and I was headed east, and I got to Cincinnati, and I was in the outskirts of Cincinnati, Ohio, and this hillbilly picked me up in a Volkswagen Fastback, and he gave me $1. He pulled over at a White Castle. He gave me $1. He said, go buy me a pack of cigarettes. So I did, and when I came back, he was gone with my backpack. So I figured, all right, what am I going to do now? I figured, well, there must be a university in this town, so I'll go to that university, and I'll go to campus, and maybe I'll find a dorm, and I can sneak into somebody's room and sleep on their floor. So I went to the University of Cincinnati campus, and I found a YMCA, and I knew that in bigger cities, YMCA had rooms. And I went and I asked the clerk, and he said, no, we're not that kind of YMCA. And I said, well, is there a No Nukes group here on campus? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, maybe they'll be able to help me out. And he said, well, it's 9 o'clock, there's nobody there. He said, I do know somebody who might be able to help you. His name is Iberus Hacker, and he's performing at a coffee house tonight, much like tonight. And he took me to this coffee house, and I walked in, and Iberus Hacker was performing Mule Skinner Blues, and he was dressed like a prisoner. He had like a denim shirt on and gray pants, and he looked like a bizarro world Santa Claus. He had a dirty gray beard with black in it. And he was about 300 pounds, and he had sunken eyes. He was a very striking presence. And I watched him perform, and there was this boy, this 12-year-old boy sitting near him. And I thought, that's weird. And when it was over, the guy from the YMCA introduced me to him, and I told him my plight, and he said, well, I can help you. I got a place for you to crash. We got in his 1969 Pontiac Bonneville, and we drove to an area of Cincinnati called Over the Rhine. And Over the Rhine was a racially troubled area, and he was working for the Urban Appalachian Council as a consultant. And he was charged with taking these 2 empty storefronts and turning them into a folk school so that black and white could come together. He called it the Harriet Tubman Mother Jones Folk School. So he left me and Johnny off there and went up to Johnny's attic room, and we smoked a joint. And then I crashed on his dirty clothes. In the morning, Iberis came for us, and he took us to breakfast at a Greasy Spoon. And he explained to me what he was doing, and he said, well, I need a boy to help. I need a gopher. And you got no better place to go, and I'll give you $5 a week allowance and meals if you'll come and work for me. So I did. And I did a lot of handyman work, painting. We built a stage in the folk school. And then he'd take me out at night to bars. And he took me to this bar called Under Construction. And I noticed there weren't any women in this bar, which I thought was odd. And then I saw a couple of men kissing in the back, and I figured out it was a gay bar, even though I'd never been to a gay bar. And it turned out he was gay as a $3 bill. And he was the last person in the world you'd ever expect to be gay. He just didn't look like the type. And he would bring home men every single night. He had an incredible power of attraction. And he brought home one guy, and I asked him about him, and he said, yeah, he's a male prostitute. And I lived there in this place with Iberis. I moved his furniture in and everything, and I remember once he made me give him a massage, and that was like really, really horrible for me. But anyway, I deflected his sexual advances, and nothing ever came of it. And eventually, a group came to meet at the folk school called the Abortion Rights Committee of Cincinnati. And there was this cute college chick in the Abortion Rights Committee, and she had really short hair, and she was beautiful with big boobs, and I figured she must be a lesbian. And one day, after we were making picket signs for an action, and one day she asked me if I wanted to have dinner with her, and I said yeah. And she took me to the co-op, and we bought whole wheat spaghetti, and we went back to her apartment. She made me spaghetti dinner, and she had bought a bottle of wine, and she drank the whole bottle of wine herself. And then we were sitting there on her couch, and she rolled a joint, and we smoked the joint. And then she said to me, she put her arms around me, and she flung herself at me, and I was like, whoa, I'm 16 years old and a virgin, and I said, hey, I'm confused here because I thought you were a lesbian. And she looked at me in the eye and she said, oh, silly, it's not men's bodies I don't like, it's their politics. So with that, she deflowered me. And as we lay there on her couch, she passed out. She was laying on my right arm, and my right arm fell asleep. But the intimacy was so precious that I didn't want to break the intimacy, and so I just let my arm go to sleep. And in the morning, my arm was useless, and she kicked me out. And I walked 2 miles to get home, and I didn't regain the use of my arm for a couple hours. And Iberis got really jealous of this, and he kicked me out. And I found a place to live, and it was an old convent, and it was an artist's studio space. And I lived there with the artists who were only there in the daytime, and I was living there at night. And I had this thing going with this one artist. There was a mannequin in his studio, and I took it and positioned it and stuff. And then he would take it and he would put it in my room and position it differently. And then finally I took separated the torso, and I took it and I hung it by an electrical cord from the ceiling by the ankle. And I finally met him, and we were smoking a bowl, and I said, well, I'm not an artist. I wish I was an artist. And he said, oh, you're an artist. And so then I tripped on acid that I had stolen, and I called this woman one more time. Her name was Deborah Krause, and I asked her if we could see each other, and she said, no, you're too unfocused. So then I left. I had the urge of flight, and I left Cincinnati, and I hitchhiked to the farm in Tennessee, which was the largest commune in America at the time. And then my adventures went on from there. Thank you.